Kripa Prabhavinde Ravindam By Priya Vasyacha Krishna Bhakti Prade Devi Satyavachai Namo Namaha Panchatattva Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama. I'm offering my limited Dandavat pranams and my Shraddha Pushpan at the worshipable beloved Diksha and Siksha Gurudevs Nitya Lila Pravishnom Vishnupad Paramahansa Sri Srila A.C. Danta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada and Nitya Lila Pravishnom Vishnupad Paramahansa Sridhar Goswami Maharaj. And Nitya Lila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. Dandavat pranam Nitya Lila Pravishtom Vishnupad Paramahansas Tathara Sacha Sri Srila Pragyan Kesha. To all of our Sri Sri Rupa Nuga Guru Varga and my Dandavat pranams to all the Vaishnavas and all the Vaishnavis. So we heard yesterday from my Siksha Guru Prabandhu book, which is really all of our Gurudev Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj's memories of his relationship with our Srila Prabhupada. He was describing the final pastime, end of that chapter. Haribol, Haribol, Haribol. We left off at the end of that chapter. Editor's notes at the bottom, which are very noteworthy. So we cannot ignore them. We should read them before, I think, the final chapter of this book. Note. For special insight, we have chosen to include here excerpts from the transcription of an simple class shortly after Srila Prabhupada's departure by one of his senior disciples, Bhagavat Das, who had been present at this same occasion described by Srila Narayan Goswami Maharaj above, which occasion and also the disappearance pastime.
Shortly after Prabhupada's disappearance.
Yeah, it says His personal insights and memories were spoken in a temple class shortly after Srila Prabhupada's departure. Perhaps it was there in Vrindavan, but at any rate, these memories were being recorded. Yes. We pray that the assembled Vaishnavas will treat this information with sensitive care. Are generally public discussion. So he begins, now he's Bhagavat Maharaj. He's told these. Well, there, what he's talking about is on the last day. He's talking about on the final day. Or, anyway, let's read and see. But we couldn't understand it. Actually, it was kind of on his side, and one arm as he was lying on the bed. We couldn't understand it. We just thought that he was lying on the bed. He had his hands in a certain way. His head was in a certain way. His legs were in a certain way. And he arched his body in a... Srila Narayana quoting Gurudev. Now he continues speaking. Some people may try to understand Srila Prabhupada's relationship with Krishna, but this indicated a specific pastime. Srila Narayana Maharaj then brought in his brahmacharis. He has a little choir there in Mathura. Brahmacharis began to sing Sri Rupa Manjari Pada. He has a beautiful voice, a very baritone voice. Sri Rupa Manjari Pada. The whole room was in tears, and everyone was very, very shook up. And then as the night continued, the kirtan continued on and on. Now in brackets it says, this second account is a continuation of the previous tape-recorded class describing recollection of November 14th during Srila Prabhupada's final 5 hours. Srila Prabhupada started exhibiting extraordinary activities. He started back and forth, and he would flail his arms in the air Then suddenly he would belch very, very loudly. Then he would have tears and tremble. And then he would roll again. In this way, he would continue on and on in so many different postures. At first, everyone was horrified. Then Srila Narayana Maharaj came, and he was the last one with whom Srila Prabhupada communicated. I don't know what asked him. Someone should ask him that. He entered the room, and Srila Prabhupada was shaking about, flailing his arms. Then he went right up to Srila Prabhupada's ear and whispered something. Then Srila Prabhupada stopped, and Srila Narayana Maharaj whispered something. His hand and shook it like he had given benediction. Srila Narayana knew what he meant, and then he put his hand down. These two quotations were from Bhagavad Maharaj, and there's a continuation of this footnote. Well, it so happens that although recorded Bhagavad Maharaj saying that no one asked Prabhupada, no one asked Gurudev, spoke into his ear, and somebody should. He just said that. Well, he did, Bhagavad Maharaj. Yes. And he told us what Srila Gurudev told to him. It was quite some years later. He was reminding Gurudev of that moment when he came into Prabhupada's room. So what he told, Srila Gurudev told that he spoke into Prabhupada's ear the Sannyas Gopi Bhav mantra. That's what he spoke. So Gurudev is now describing his divine departure. I'm pretty sure it's Gurudev. They had these two quotations in smaller print. Let's read and see. Those final hours on November 14th, he was not speaking. I felt at that time, by seeing his face, that he was fully remembering the pastimes of Krishna in Vrindavan. Yeah, this is Gurudev speaking. I think this was great mercy coming from Krishna, because he had served Radha Krishna for his entire lifetime. For that special person, Krishna absorption is there. Entranced in this way, his eyes were closed, and seen. He had no pain, no distraction. At that time, his mouth was so beautiful. It was like a blossomed rose, like a lotus. These are the signs of a very great personality. Otherwise, another person may cry, I am dying, so ugly. But he was never like that. He was like, I knew what he was doing. I have seen others also, including my Gurudev, entering a Prakat Lila, Krishna's eternal pastimes. I have seen Pujapad Ananga Mohan Brahmachari, Srila Jagannath Babaji Maharaj, a disciple of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada, Srila Narasingha Maharaj, Padmanabha Maharaj, that's the old one. I have seen many devotees when they... So, I could judge what was transpiring. They would call out, Krishna, Krishna, and Radhe, Radhe. Which show that someone is remembering Krishna. And Srila Bhakti Swami Maharaj was exhibiting all those signs. He was very beautiful and very exalted. There was no sign of pain and no attachment to the body or anything else. For his young disciples, nor for any of the outward things he had established in his Krishna consciousness movement. Now there was nothing else, only remembering Krishna. our brahmacharis were softly singing some bhajans. At that time, I saw that he was fully satisfied, and thus I was also fully satisfied. I knew then that he would surely go soon, but there was no sign that he would go. There was no sign when he would go. Whether he would leave now or in a short time. He had previously talked with me when he was in his external consciousness, but he did not request me to stay. I was not in a hurry, but I was thinking that just after my leaving for Mathura, he would enter into Nitya Leela. We left to return to Mathura, and we were informed that he departed a few hours later. So that was 7:15 p.m. on November 14th, 1977. So Gurudev had come into the room, let's estimate 4 hours, 5 hours before, in the middle of the afternoon. So I was there, but I don't specifically remember. It may be because sometimes we were going to use the bathroom, then we were coming back. The whole room was full. You've seen the video. And so many of the Gurukul children were also there in the room. And actually, in my case, I had my own little story to tell because there were, generally whatever would be happening in Prabhupada's room that was of great importance, it would go around quickly. But that morning after I did my seva, which was to go into Prabhupada's room and chant, an hour and a half, with small kartals and 2 other devotees chanting. I went for a japa walk. And I thought, okay, I'll go for a japa walk until lunchtime. Room next to the Gurukul where I stayed, and but when I came, there was no sounds, and I quickly went upstairs. And I saw Srila Maharaj. He pulled me out. "Oh, what's happening?" I said, "I don't know. I just came back from a... I'll let you know." And then I heard all these voices singing. So everyone was... I don't know how everyone fit, actually. But when I came into the vestibule before Prabhupada's room, then Pushkar, the artist, was sitting there. He said, "What's happening?" And he said, "Oh, this morning, Prabhupada's doctor came and examined his pulse and everything. Right? And that Ayurvedic doctor also was like guru of gurus, of Ayurvedic doctors. So he then informed the devotees, according to his pulse, he will leave in, 10 hours or something like that. 8 or 10 hours. So that's why all the devotees... Probably. But I can tell you one thing. If you listen to this, you'll understand. Maybe they called him, I don't know. But anyway, I'll tell the story. So then, as all the devotees were leaving the room, then I went to Jayadvaita Swami. And I said, "I want to stay." And I had been coming in and out of the room all during the last month. And I'd been doing seva. Actually, I was washing the cloth of Tamal Krishna Maharaj because I wanted some seva to Srila Prabhupada, but there was no seva. I asked the servants. All the sevas were taken. So then I thought, okay, what's our philosophy? Servant of the servant? Okay, I'll do that. It became a very valuable thing because he himself told me, like the next day, he told me, he said, if you would not have gone out of the room during that cloth and hanging, then I wouldn't have had clean cloth to do the samadhi and everything with Prabhupada. Appreciated that. The next day, Prabhupada's room, it was only me, Upendra, maybe Upendra, I'm not sure. Tamal, maybe, I forget exactly who, 3, 4, 5 devotees. And then he said, oh, you to be the first pujari of Prabhupada. You serve in such unfailing way, right? Like that. So I became the first pujari for Prabhupada's samadhi. But that didn't last long because I got jaundice at that time. Couldn't do it. Prabhupada's transcendental Sri Vigraha was being bathed and dressed and getting ready for going on the palanquin.
So this is like in the middle of the night?
No, this is 7:15, so it's probably 7:45 in the evening.
Okay.
Literally took a half an hour or so. And then Prabhupada was placed on the palanquin and all the devotees were waiting outside. And then there was a very big kirtan bringing Prabhupada out. And then we circumambulated Krishna Balaram Mandir with kirtan 3 times. Then we came inside of the temple with the Prabhupada and then placed him in front of the 3 altars one by one. And they played the Govinda Adipurusham song. And then Prabhupada was taken, I don't remember. Yeah, I think he was left on the palanquin. And they placed on the Vyasasana, on the palanquin. And it's at that exact time that the Guru Puja was performed. And I don't remember whether or not it was Gurudev singing the Guru Puja, Shri Guru Charana Padma song, or if he was singing after, but I think he was actually singing. He was leading the kirtan, and that was the very first time that I saw him. But it was actually the first time that I heard him. And when I heard his singing, I was very moved. And I was very curious who he is. So I remember asking some godbrother, might have been an Indian-bodied godbrother, that who is this sannyasi singing? I assumed, though, that he was from Gaudiya Math. I assumed that. And then that devotee told me, oh, that's Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj from Mathura. And then I remember thinking to myself, oh, that's Narayan Maharaj. Because we had heard his name. In the previous days and even a few weeks, we had heard his name. And also, Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar, Prabhupada was questioned by the few GBC members to recommend him any person that they can go to for guidance. And that's when Prabhupada told Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj. And we heard that the very same day, because in the Prabhupada's house is here, and then there's the entryway to the guest house building. And there's that big open sitting area. So I remember hearing from Harisari, I think it was. Yeah, I think it was him. That he was sitting and a whole bunch of devotees were sitting, narrating to us the conversation that happened that day, in which Srila Prabhupada directly told the name of Srila Sridhar Maharaj. So we were also hearing this name of this person named Narayan Maharaj. Not exactly in the same way, but we heard his name. We were aware that Prabhupada had called such a person and that he had also requested him to perform his samadhi. I remember hearing that. So when I was there and actually seeing him for the first time and hearing his singing, I was very, very moved. This is my first impression. And I thought, oh, that's Narayan Maharaj. So, we were there. Gurudev led all of us the whole night into the next morning. Everyone stayed up, and the next morning he led, walking with his danda all the way to all the different temples, a couple of hours of kirtan, hundreds and hundreds of garlands being placed on Prabhupada as he was carried in the palanquin. Kinchana Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj also was there. You can see in the photos and the video, playing mridanga most of the way. And then at the end of that, then Prabhupada was brought back, and the palanquin was placed on the side of the samadhi pit, and then the whole ceremony began as we all watched. So, that's my recollection.
Can I ask you?
I didn't finish this yet, but you want to ask something?
Did Gurudev lead the entire kirtan all the
No,
way?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not all night also.
Okay.
I don't even recall whether or not he actually sang more, but probably did during that night. In Krishnadas Babaji, I was sitting directly behind him. I offered him my chadar. It was a very cold night. I offered him my chadar, and he accepted it, because I put it around his shoulders. And I kept that chadar, but when I flew to America a couple of years later on Pan Am, which went, lost my baggage, and that chadar was in there. Yes. So now, Gurudev is continuing. He said, we left to return to Mathura, and we were informed that he departed a few hours later. So they must have, from the moment that they heard that he had, because literally there might have been maximum 45 minutes. So there wasn't that much traffic in those days, so they probably had some car. They came, or ISKCON car or whatever. Then Gurudev says, shortly after that time, we returned to the Krishna Balaram Mandir and made all arrangements for his Mahotsav. According to his wishes, we took him on procession to most of the important deities of Vrindavan. There were so many of his disciples and other persons chanting in that procession. And all of the Brajavasis came out into the streets to honor him. After this, I prepared his body, wrote the chest, and with tilak. His body. Following all of the proper Vaishnava procedures, I put his transcendental body into samadhi with my own hand. So then Gurudev is continuing. praying cannot be contained within the material body. One with a material body can attain up to the stage of Swarup Siddhi. Yet we see that Rasika Bhaktas, those who are already internally situated, well, this is in parentheses, Shamrani's explanation. We see that Rasika Bhaktas, those who are already internally situated in their exchanges with Krishna in his Leela, these Rasika Bhaktas, we see that they have praying. And they also appear in a body. We should understand that their body is not a worldly material body. However, this old praying. In such a mood of self, it would burst into pieces. To understand this, we must perform sadhana bhajan and become qualified. Srila Swami Maharaj was always in that mood, but he did not externally manifest it. He kept it hidden within himself. He had to suppress all his actual moods for his preaching purposes. His praying was displaying itself inside, but it was not fully manifest externally. Otherwise, all would have been madness, and the preaching would have stopped. The udipan, the stimulus, was always there, but inside. When he went to the West, there was udipan for preaching. He preached, "You are not your body." And he preached Gita, Jagannath worship, etc. At the end, he came back to Dham, relishing all his internal moods. And he was always deeply hearing and chanting Hare Krishna. He told us, "My home is in Vrindavan." Home means his loving home, his real home. Srila Swami Maharaj in Madhurya Rasa. Some may say, why not Sakya Rasa? I am not denying this because everything is present in Madhurya Rasa. All other rasas like Vatsalya Ras, Sakya Ras, and so on are included in Madhurya Rasa. So, it may be said that all rasas were in him. He was not deprived of Sakya Ras. He had written some statements in his poems, and he had special affection for Gaur Nitai and Krishna. But he was certainly in Madhurya Rasa, because his sannyas guru, my Gurudev, gave him the sannyas mantra, the Gopi Bhav mantra, in our Rupa Nuga line. Just as Srila Rupa Goswami, Srila Jiva Goswami, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and his Gurudev were in this rasa. And just as he wrote in his realizations in the purports of his books, he was surely in Madhurya Rasa. That finishes this chapter, but I was remembering two little stories of my own with Prabhupada that I wanted to tell in those final days. So, the first story is a couple of weeks after I had arrived in Vrindavan, which was a little more than a month before Prabhupada passed away. So, from the very beginning when I arrived, probably even before I arrived, Prabhupada had expressed his desire that there should be Hare Krishna Mahamantra Kirtan going on the whole day. He wanted that in his room. And mostly Prabhupada was lying on his bed and not speaking or anything. But he wanted that to be going on whole day. So we did that softly. And there was a schedule formed of rotations of devotees, and usually there was about 3 or 4 devotees. And there was a small little kartals, very small, so they weren't loud. And we chanted not softly, but like not loudly. We didn't chant loudly. Then one day, our godbrother, Braj Prabhu, he came, he arrived in Vrindavan, and he came in at the same session that when I was there. It was, I think I came in like from 9:30 in the morning till like 11 o'clock, something like that. So he came and brought a harmonium, and everyone knew who Braj Prabhu is, and it was well known that Braj Prabhu, his kirtan singing was liked very much by Srila Prabhupada, and he had a very great singing voice. I remember some of his outstanding kirtans back in the mid-70s in LA Temple. Yeah, so at any rate, he brought a harmonium, and so now we had the little kartals and we had the harmonium, and so he began playing. And sometimes Prabhupada's sister Pishima would walk in the room, and we'd look at her, and then she'd do something and go out. Sometimes she was cooking for Prabhupada. So anyway, this particular day, he was playing on the harmonium. And so I'm sitting next to him, and he's sitting here, and there's a couple of devotees behind. And so we're chanting. But then somebody came into the room and whispered into Bhardraj's ear something, probably for some purpose. So then he stopped the kirtan, and he said, "I have to leave the room, I'll be back." And he asked me, "Do you know how to play harmonium?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Oh, well, you take over until I come back." And that was my moment that I had waited for 7 years. Because always I wanted to lead kirtan in front of Prabhupada. It's desire. So here I was, sitting there with the harmonium, and I had just come from Bengal, where I was there for months, and I was also kind of practicing some basic mridanga beats, and I had become a little bit Bengali-ized, from in my kirtan style and singing and all of that. So I began to sing the melody that Srila Prabhupada sang for Gurvastakam. His melody that he recorded, the one that's on the Happening album. And then, and then there's certain parts where his voice goes up. Nikunja yuno ratikeli siddhai yayali bijukti rapekshaniya. I sang it just like that. And guess what? I also sang it for Gurudev on the last day. Standing below in Jagannath Puri. Mahibharta will remember that. He was also there. I sang exactly the same melody, and Gurudev was up on the veranda. That's a whole story. So I began singing like that. And then Bhishima walked into the room. And she saw me and heard what I was singing, and she went like that. So then, kept on singing. And then after that I sang Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Hare Krishna. And around that time, This was like maybe 15 minutes I was chanting. Then Bhardraj came back. And then I stopped and I gave the harmonium over, I slid the harmonium over. And then I paid my obeisances and it was time for me to go and do my seva. I think I was cooking the noontime offering for the deities. So then I went out of the house and I went all the way to the other, and I went all the way up to the third floor where I was staying in a room with Nayana Baram, actually. We were sharing a room in the Gurukula building. And, but shortly after I reached the top and was in my room, I heard a voice calling, Urukram! Urukram! And I said, I'm up here on the third floor. He says, Urukram, come down immediately. Prabhupada's calling for you. I said, what? So I just immediately locked the door, went down the stairs, and then I'm walking. It was Jayadvaita who was calling for me. So then I was walking with him back to Prabhupada's house, and I said, so, why is Prabhupada calling for me? And he said, well, this is what happened after you left. When Bhardraj started chanting again, then after a couple of minutes of chanting, then Prabhupada, he spoke something. And then whenever Prabhupada would speak anything, immediately the kirtan would stop, and devotees would come around. But Prabhupada simply said, who was that chanting before? And then one of them, Tamal or someone told, well, that was one of your American disciples from America, Uru Kramadas. Prabhupada went, And then the kirtan started again. And then a few minutes later, again, Prabhupada said, who was that chanting before? Well, that was your disciple, Urukram, from America. And then Tamal said, go away. And so I heard the story as I'm approaching Prabhupada's room, and my heart was just because in trying to chant for him, I was pouring out my heart, and he received that. And that was the only time that I had such a direct, affirmation from Srila Prabhupada. So I came into the room and paid my obeisances, and then Bhardraj moved the harmonium over again, and then I chanted for Prabhupada. So after that, for the remainder of the days, and even after Prabhupada departed, everyone knew Prabhupada likes Urukram's chanting. And they made me the kirtan organizer of who gets to chant the Guru Puja in the morning. They have a list, and people Guru Kripa and others, hey Urukram, put me on the list, I want to chant. Okay, I'll find a place for you. So anyway, that's my little story about that, but there's one more. And it's the very night before Prabhupada departed. Very night before. I was in Prabhupada's room. There was no more chanting. When Prabhupada would be in sleep mode, then no one was in there. But we could come in and sit and chant japa, and usually there was someone massaging Prabhupada. On this evening, it was only Jagadish Prabhu. He was at Prabhupada's foot of the bed, and Prabhupada's feet were, right this close to him, and there was a sheet covering his lotus feet. And he was massaging through the sheet. He was massaging Prabhupada's feet. And I was sitting there, chanting very softly my japa. Jagadish said, he said, and there I was, all alone with Srila Prabhupada, and his lotus feet this far from my face. And I'm massaging and then praying and begging, and it was a very amazing moment. And the very next day, So those are my two little pastimes with Srila Prabhupada in those final days, which completely satisfied my heart. Because most of us, we didn't have, like Bhagwat, he's always talking about, oh, yeah, I was with Prabhupada and we were talking together for an hour, and we never had that, right? No. The vast majority of Prabhupada's disciples, probably like 98% of his disciples, who mostly came after 1970, they didn't have that opportunity. But if you were temple president, then you did. Like Rishab Prabhu had so many exchanges with Prabhupada, and he had good fortune, therefore we didn't get that. But Prabhupada, I had that, and in the next moment, I saw Gurudev, and I had so much Gurudev, so much, more than anyone could deserve in one lifetime. And we all, so many of us, right here in New Braj, real Navadvip world. So that's Prabhupada. And Gurudev filled all of our hearts, especially the Prabhupada disciples, but fulfilled everyone's heart's desires. Nothing was remaining. There was something. Gurudev gave everything. So these we just heard, and tomorrow we'll continue the final chapter, which is not so long, where Gurudev is saying that my message is one with his. So we'll hear that from Gurudev tomorrow, and also we'll see how far. Probably we'll finish that tomorrow. But then there's also the beautiful book, Our Affectionate Guardians, and I'm going to read some nectar from that. So, Jai Nityalila Pravishtom Vishnupad Paramahansas Tatara Sata Sri Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Srila Gurudev Ki Jai, Sri Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Nitai Gaur Premanam
Hari Hari
Mancha Kalpascha Kripa Sindhu Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo.
Gal. Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nityalila Pravishta Om Vishnupada Stakara Shri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Nityalila Pravishta Om Vishnupada Stakara Shri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Nityalila Pravishta Om Vishnupada Stakara Shri Srimad Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Nityalila Pravishta Om Vishnupada Stakara Shri Srimad Bhakti Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada ki jai. Nityalila Pravishta Param Bhagavat Pravar Shri Srila Gaurkishore Das Babati Maharaj ki jai. Nityalila Pravishta Shri Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki jai. Nityalila Jagannath Das Babati Shri Gauriya Vedanta Acharya Shri Srila Baladev Vibhushana Prabhu ki jai. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur ki jai. Srila Narottam Srinivas Shamananda Prabhu Trai ki jai. Srila Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami Prabhu ki jai. Sri Rupsi Sanatam Bhakta Raghunath Sri Dev Gopala Bhatta Das Raghunath Goswami Prabhu ki jai. Sri Swarup Damodar Sri Gaura Parshad Namacharya Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Antadrit Mayapur Simantadrit Kodunadrit Mantadrit Koladrit Ritadrit Janadrit Modunadrit Rudra Patmika Shri Navadrit Dham ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopi Go Goparan Radha Soganatmaka Shri Mandala ki jai. Shri Radha Kunda Shama Kunda Ganga Jamuna Tulsi Bhakti Devi ki jai. Srimati Govinda Devi ki jai. Shri Purnamasi Yogamaya ki jai. Shri Gopishwar Mahadev ki jai. Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Sudarshan Chakraji ki jai. Shri Chetra Mandal ki jai. Sarva Vigna Vinashkari Shri Nrsingadev Charidam ki jai. Chari Sampradaya ki jai. Chari Acharya ki jai. Akaramat Shri Raja Shri Chaitanya ki jai. Keshav Ji Gauri ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Ki jai. Vrinda ki jai. Nitai Gauri.
Namaste Narasimhaya Dala Dala Dalaine Hiranyakashipuraksha Shirananganakalane Yoshino Payatone Singha Oya Doyam Tatone Singha Hare Singha Hare Singha Hare Hare